Hi, welcome back to those who have attended our previous sessions, and sorry for the slight delay there. We just had a few technical hitches. Welcome to the Enterprise Excellence Network webinar series. Today we are joined by David Mann, who is going to be talking about engaging executives in your lean initiative. So many of you know about the Enterprise Excellence Network by now, but we are a members arena and we host best practice benchmarking events for lean leaders across Europe, and we're doing everything virtually now until we can get back to normal. So today we'll hear from David, and then we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So please feel free to put your questions into the questions tab, and Peter will deliver those to David. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Peter.
Okay, thanks very much, Emma. And yes, good afternoon or good morning, whoever time zone you're in. It's our great pleasure to welcome David Mann to this webinar. Many of you have perhaps read David's book. This is the third edition of the book. You can see I've actually used it. There's some little tabs on there. And I think, you know, the creating a lean culture is certainly one, as far as I'm concerned, been one of the benchmark books in lean, and has provided a lot of great information on various topics, including leader standard work. So very pleased to welcome David, and David's going to pick up on one of the chapters from the book that's actually new into the third edition, and very much focused on engaging the executives on your lean initiative. So David, with that, I'll hand over to yourself.
All right, thank you, Peter. Hello, everybody. Good morning or good afternoon from me as well. So the subject is engaging executives in your lean initiative. And that's something that I've been focused on for several years, going to conferences, site visits. I was hearing over and over again from internal lean leaders that they were having difficulty keeping their executives engaged. So this is an example of this problem statement. I'm going to read this just because I think it's pretty powerful. So this is the Vice President for Operations in a precision manufacturing organization. I've hosted hundreds of tours at our company since we began to apply the lean management system starting in 2008. The majority of lean champions that come through confided in me that getting their executives on board was very difficult, and that they were concerned that all the hard work of their teams would go to waste if they couldn't garner support from the leadership or ownership of their organizations. So this was a pretty widespread problem that executives can give the okay to start, but they themselves were not sufficiently engaged, and I have my own personal experience with that, which we'll get to in a couple of minutes. But I'm going to be looking at the problem of engaging executives through the lens of the lean management system, the schematic of which you see here. Lean management, unlike lean production, is quite straightforward. These are the three core elements. There are others, but these are the three core elements of the lean management system. There's frequent focus on the health of the process through visual controls. Visual controls, an example would be a hour-by-hour production tracking chart, or a day-by-the-hour production tracking chart, where the expected production for a given period of time could be 15 minutes, could be 60 minutes, could be all day, depending on the velocity of the processes that are being followed. So there's a expected production on the chart with a place to write down for each time period what the actual production was. So you're comparing expected versus actual. When actual falls short, that's noted on the hour-by-hour chart or day-by-the-hour chart. That chart gets taken to an accountability meeting. It would typically be at the beginning of the next shift of that shift crew's next shift, and what was observed at the point where the actual production fell short, that's noted on as a task assignment for someone to investigate on the accountability board, which is a matrix where the rows are individuals involved in at some level of leadership for that area, and the columns are dates, and what goes in the name by date cell would typically be a small post-it note with an assignment, typically to begin looking into what happened when we failed to meet our expected output. What keeps this whole process going is leader standard work. I'm not going to go into great detail about it. There's if you need references, I would refer you to any one of the editions of Creating a Lean Culture. So the proposition here is that lean management supports and then extends the gains from applying the tools of lean production. This is a key for this presentation and for this approach. So what you get first is you use the tools of lean, the industrial engineering tools of lean, to stabilize an area where instability had been noted. The management system then sustains and captures problems. This is that actual versus expected chart. When the problems are captured and well enough understood, then the lean tools are applied again to improve the problems, the second level of problems that arise after the initial problems are resolved. The management system is then retained, put in place to capture the next level of problems and sustain the most recent improvement. And this continues in this schematic. This continues with the lean tools making improvements, the management system stabilizing the improvements, and then with the actual versus expected information, finding problems. You apply the lean tools, you stabilize them with the management system, and so on. This runs up through perfection, and if you achieve perfection, I'd be very interested in coming to your place and looking at it. Sort of a heavy lift to be perfect. So the value proposition that's at the base of engaging executives in your lean initiative is that if the lean management system is healthy, then the lean production system is healthy. So the links in this chain that connect the management system and the standardized lean process, the links in this chain are the elements in leader standard work down through the organization. There's a bit of a paradox in lean, and that lean is very dependent on process focus, on process discipline. Yet the whole enterprise rests with people. In this case, the people are going to be the ones who have the power to say yay or nay to continuing the efforts in lean production. So the executives are key in this, as you saw in that problem statement, and as you yourself may have experienced, that if the executive support is lacking, eventually you find yourself teetering very close to the dreaded pit of instability, backsliding, and despair. So, continuing then, I was in a position when I worked at Steelcase in Grand Rapids, Michigan, a large manufacturer, that I was asked to lead a newly formed lean team, which focused not on manufacturing, but which focused on office business processes. So we would take work from people, internal people asking for our help, but we would only accept an assignment if the business process crossed at least one organizational boundary. So we were looking at enterprise business processes, cross-functional enterprise business processes. And as part of this work, we followed the pattern that we were very familiar with in manufacturing organization. That is, go to the place, look at the process, talk to the people. Sort of the mantra for genba walking, where genba is the shop floor or where the value is added. Could be in a shop, could be in an office, could be somewhere else. So we wanted to help our executives understand the lean management system. So we scheduled genba walks with them. In our case, they were once a month for about an hour. We got them scheduled a year in advance. So we would go meet the executive in question, walk out to the office floor where a lean project was going on, and expected the executive would learn about lean management in that way. It turned out that didn't work. I came into my monthly meeting with my boss, who was one of the 4 members. These are senior executive, corporate officer level executives that had contributed people to this team. The Office Lean Consulting Team is what we called it. So I came in to talk to Nancy for my monthly meeting, and she greeted me with this statement: "David, you have a problem." Got my attention right away, as you would imagine. In the ensuing discussion, it became clear that the executives wanted to support Lean. They were the ones who had contributed staff members to staff the Office Lean Consulting Team. So they wanted to support Lean, but they didn't know how. Nancy's advice to me was, you have to find a way to involve us, and went on to say that speaking of herself and her peers, her senior executive peers, if you don't involve us, typically after about 18 months, we find something else to focus on for improvement, and we move to the next management thinking, and that's going to happen here if you can't find a way to involve us. I took this information back to my team quickly, as you might imagine, and we looked into our records. The team member who was responsible for coordinating the genba walks did the math, and the answer turned out to be exactly, in this case, exactly 50% of our executive genba walks had been canceled and never rescheduled. So that's a sign of not being involved. So I'm back with the team, and we're talking about, so what's going on here? Let's understand this situation. On reflections, it occurred to us that we had never thought of our executives as customers. We had thought about them more the way that manufacturing lean people think about their senior leaders as potential apprentices. That is, people who would learn the lean tools and the application of lean tools to various areas in the manufacturing process. These were not our executives. Our executives were with one exception, they were all in the office part of the business, the white collar technical professional parts of the business. So those were our customers, and we then asked ourselves, So what do we know about these people? Who are these people? All of us on the team were long tenured employees, 15, 20 years with the company. And we pretty much knew who our executives were. We had worked with them individually in a variety of roles over the years. And so this is what we decided we knew about them. These were very bright people, extremely quick studies, fast learners. They were extremely competitive people. They were highly achievement oriented. These are people who had aced every test they'd ever taken in their lives. And they want to ace every test. That's the achievement oriented and competitive attributes showing up. They were definitely action oriented. They were thirsty for hands-on. These are people who had come up through the ranks without exception, and they had had hands-on responsibility. They no longer did, basically isolated from the day-to-day work in their senior executive positions, but they were still really thirsty for some way to have a hands-on influence. At the same time, they expected staff preparation work when they were preparing. You can think of it as preparing for a speaking engagement, except in this case, the Gemba walks were as much a listening engagement as a speaking engagement. But they wanted that staff preparation so they could be comfortable out on the office floor, and more than anything else, they wanted to drive improvement. So we go through this design process, looking first at what we were providing, and then what a better customer value would be. So what we were providing was putting executives in a passive role. They would go out to the floor, look at charts, and hear presentations that were very much from the technical side of lean implementations and office processes. Lots of Japanese terminology was used to describe the elements that the teams were talking about. So the executives here are in a passive role, and they were not in a position to understand a lot of what they were being told. So they were unprepared to participate. They had low confidence in their own lean knowledge, so difficult to engage with these team members in the discussion of their lean project. And in fact, they were uncomfortable discussing lean. So not a great design. They felt uncomfortable, not confident, and incompetent in these Gemba walk areas. So the whole process of Gemba walking for them, which they'd been doing for about 18 months, was a low value sort of bureaucratic check the box exercise. And they were specifically not interested themselves in becoming lean implementers. They had people like us to worry about the technical ins and outs of lean implementation. So this is our design now for a better customer value. We wanted to put the executives in the driver's seat, so it was an executive-driven experience. The executives to get the answer and ace the test at the end of the Gemba walk. And I'll describe what that looks like in a minute. We wanted to provide them with good staff preparation so that the executives were ready to lead and participate in the Gemba walk. We wanted them to be confident observers, comfortable coaching lean management in Gemba, and competent in the lean management system itself. Finally, we wanted our executives to treat their Gemba walks, first of all, as valuable, and secondly, engaging them, sort of a fun, if you will, investment of their time. So we designed this new Gemba walk, and we produced a rationale, a one-page rationale that set the stage for why Gemba walks were important. We were sort of restarting with them. And we developed worksheets based on the assessment for lean, for the dimensions of lean applied in an office setting. So the worksheets provided value from the customer's perspective. The design provided a rationale for why this was important for executives and the benefits to executives. Both of these are available as free downloads from my website if you're interested. So the outcome, largely based on the worksheets, was process dependent. The process was quite clear. The process itself was predictable and repeatable, so that month by month, on the Gemba walk for the new month for any given executive, many of them would say, so what process are we looking at? What element of lean management are we looking at this time? This is the predictability and the reliability, so that executives knew what was coming and were prepared to participate in it. So the structure put the executive student in control in that on the worksheets. I'll show you an image of what those look like, but those are also available as PDFs should you be interested. So the worksheets provided the preparation. That is, there would be a statement of intent for what the element of lean is that we're looking at in this particular Gemba walk. There would then be 5, 6, maybe 7 questions, some of which would be highlighted. If I'm Gemba walking Nancy, I would highlight the things that I think she should learn in the management system to take her to the next level of confidence and competence in assessing lean management. I'd highlight those with a highlighter on the worksheet. I'd hand it to Nancy as we were heading out to the floor. And these were questions that it was her assignment to get answers to, both by observing what she could see on the floor. Again, lots of visual evidence for lean management in these project areas, so that she would know what to look for and the kinds of things that she would want to ask of the people on the floor who were involved in the lean project and doing the work. So that was their preparation. The worksheets, as the staff, representing the staff work here, provided an agenda for clear content, focus, as well as the agenda and the content for the Gemba walk. Gemba walks would be typically from half an hour to 45 minutes. At the end of the Gemba walk, there is a test. And the test would be, as we're leaving the floor, I might say to Mark, so Mark, how would you rate this area on their proficiency in the lean management system? So that's the test. They're supposed to say, well, gee, I thought they were, they looked, there were things that we saw in the visuals. They looked neat. There were parts of them that were filled in. I'd say on this 5-point scale that they were, maybe a high 3, maybe even a low 4. So we'll come back to that in a minute. The rationale at this restart of the Gemba walk went into how does the management system relate to the lean strategy? How does the management system relate to the integrity of the chain of command, at the top of which each of our executive steering team members found themselves? And what's the value proposition for executives in Gemba walking the lean management system and learning how to assess the health of the lean management system? And how does expertise in the lean management system, the ability to assess its quality, in genba where it's being applied? How does that make for a better day at work for executives? So this is an example of the worksheet for visual controls. There's a statement of intent that you can, I hope this is clear enough for you to see. The intent for visual controls should do at least one of two things. One, reflect the actual versus expected pace or progression of work in administrative support or line processes. And then there's a capture the delays, interruptions, and frustrations that arrive in doing the work. Those are both part of the intent of visual controls. You can see the diagnostic questions, and below, running across the page, you can see 5 boxes. Each of one is an attainment level, an assessment level for the lean management system, ranging from pre-lean, just starting, recognizable, stabilizing, and sustainable. So when we ask our executive student, if you will, as we're walking off the floor, so how do you think they did on visual controls? And you get the, well, that's, they look sort of good, things were filled out, I'd rank them, well, I don't know, a high 3, maybe a low 4. So it was almost always the case that, at least initially, that executives would overrate the maturity of the lean management system in a given area. So off the floor, how do you think they rated? Oh, high 3, low 4. The lean team member was the criterion for what's good, and the lean team member, they're the executive's lean coach out on the floor would say, well, they were actually, I would say, a low 2. And so right at that point, we have the undivided attention of our executive who just failed to ace the test. And so now there's a little bit of coaching. So I'll say, I saw them as a low 2. Let me tell you what I saw, and I'll describe areas where there was room for improvement in the way that element of the lean management system had been implemented in that area on that day. That produces a teachable moment when we compare ratings. So this is a schematic that gives you a sense of what we wanted, the kind of experience we wanted to provide for the executive. So, and again, this is the repeatable, predictable process. So you go meet your executive at wherever the agreed upon meeting time is to occur. You describe, so this time we're going to Gemba walk visual controls. You might want to look for elements that were highlighted, elements from the intention of visual control, questions to ask about, and things to look for. So that's the staff preparation. And as I've just been noting, that also represents the test. So you've got the Gemba worksheet, you've got the questions asked, you've got the things to look for. This puts the executive in the position of driving the bus. Afterwards, you do the comparison of ratings. The executive says, oh, I thought they were pretty good, because I'm not myself. This would not be part of the conversation explicitly. But if you're unfamiliar with the management system, you're going to tend to overrate it. So that's the executive overrating. That's the lean coach or sensei saying, not quite that high. I would say it's a 2.5. At that point, you've got about 90 seconds for a teachable moment. So this is what I saw. This is what it looked like to me. These are things you want to watch for on our next Gemba walk. And it was like magic. in terms of really engaging the executive's interest and really motivating them to learn how to do the assessment of the lean management system. The rationale for restarting the genba walks with executives is that if you can learn to assess the lean management system, which is quite straightforward, as I mentioned earlier, you can see for yourself with your own eyes the integrity of the chain of command under you, between you and the people on the floor, in terms of understanding the elements of lean management and putting them in place in a way that is going to be useful and constructive. And if you can do that, the critical point is that if you learn to assess the lean management system, you can tell for yourself that you are confident, competent, and comfortable going to the floor, looking at the management system. If the management system appears to be unhealthy, you can be sure that the production system is unhealthy, and you'd be in a position, right after that teachable moment, to ask your lean coach, so who do you think I should talk to in my organization to find where there may be a breakdown in the deployment of lean down through my organization. And as a lean coach working in that executive's area, you are almost certainly going to be in a position to suggest someone that the senior executive, him or herself, then take to the floor and see how they're able, see what their understanding of the lean management system is and why it's important, so that you can reset expectations for your subordinate manager if you're the senior executive, and you can then follow up with genba walks over the next weeks or month or so. So the better day at work for the executive is, I know how to do this myself. I don't have to rely on unscrambling 6 Excel charts that someone has sent up to me to demonstrate the status of the lean management system applications. I can go to the floor, look at the process, talk to the people, and understand myself how well this message and this process is being disseminated down through my organization. All right, so that's the teachable moment, and then there's follow-up work that you may want to do with that executive, or that you recommend the executive do with one of her or his subordinate managers. So the value proposition, would be the restart, is take a look at the one-page rationale for focusing on learning to assess the status of the lean management system. Can you deliver it to the executive? Do you have questions that you want to be clear about before you go to the executive? These are not tablets that have been handed down and carved in stone. Are there things that you would change? Because this is your relationship as a coach, going up about 3 or 4 or maybe more levels in the organization. So is there a way that you would find this more effective when you hand it to your executive student, in quotes, and have the discussion with them about, this is why we're focusing on it. So I would then also review the genba worksheets, pick one of them that you feel comfortable using on a genba walk with an executive in a particular area where you have implemented or might implement the lean management system. And if there are questions that you have about this lean standard, put your heads together with some of your peers and get a sense of, why are we doing this? What questions might come up, and how should we be prepared to answer them? So the lean management system and its focus on process sustains the gains and drives improvements. And importantly, in this case, it provides a vehicle for engaging executives that's personally meaningful to the executives, and that puts them in a position of being competent, comfortable, and ready to go to the floor and get some value from it. As Peter mentioned, this material that this is a quick summary of it, of course, but this is the material that led me to put in the work to write another edition of the book. Most of chapter 8 focuses on the content that I've just been covering with you, so I certainly recommend it to you. And if you have questions about it or any other aspect of lean management, please feel free to contact me via email. I'm no longer available for on-site consulting, but I'm happy to have a conversation with you about what you've seen, questions you have, and maybe exploring some alternatives to the approach you take to gemba walking the lean management system and preparing your executives to be competent assessors of lean management on the floor. So that's what I have for you today. I think there is a little bit of time for Q&A. So so let's go to that. Let's go there, Peter.
Great. Thank you very much, David. That was good. It was having read the chapter, it was really good to hear the voiceover for it as well. So that was great. I have a whole heap of questions I'd like to ask, but I think we should let some of the audience come in first. So I've got a couple, well, 3 now come in, so I'll read them out for you. So the first one is from my friend Willie over there in Germany. So he says, why is it good to push the execs onto this stage of, doing the gemba walks, etc.? Why not let them observe some key activities of the team? I suppose he's sort of referring to the sort of Ono chalk circle type idea.
Oh, that's a great example, Peter. So the Ono chalk circle is what happens on the manufacturing floor. And the student stands in the chalk circle for 30 minutes, and the owner then goes back and says, "What did you see?" The key to this is in a physical production environment, you can see problems much more clearly. So you can see inventory piling up. You can see rejected parts piling up, or after the lean implementation, the initial implementation of lean production on the floor, you can see areas that are roped off that used to hold piles of inventory, but the inventory is gone. We're not building to inventory. We're building to replace based on what's been consumed. So we've freed up a lot of floor space. Or if it's before lean, you're looking at I mean, I remember walking through factories and seeing 2-ton orange metal tubs stacked to the 40-foot ceiling of the factory with work in process inventory. So you can see things much more clearly in a physical production environment than you can in an office process, where most of the work is if not buried, it's at least it's obscured. It's in the computer network, and what you see is you see people sitting at their desks working on their terminals. You can't see the waste nearly as readily in office processes as you can in physical processes.
Sure. I think maybe what Willie was getting at, and certainly in my mind, I like this observation thing. So if you're trying to sort of do, the development of the local team, obviously the gemba walks can be very valuable. But I certainly encourage, as part of a leader standard work regime, the boss of the team leader, or whatever, the group leader or whatever, to observe the team meeting. because from that they get a lot of information that could sort of supplement what they're seeing on the Genba walk. So I don't know if that was what Willie was getting at there. Maybe he'll come back on that.
I would endorse that, Peter. You need to be, you need to be careful of overwhelming.
Yeah.
But after a couple of times, people are going to get used to seeing, an executive citing, if you will. They're used to that, especially if the executive is prepared to make observations of her own, or provide some further information that's pertinent to the lean processes that the team's working on implementing.
Sure. Okay, good. We got a number of questions, so let's go on to the next one. So the next one is from Stephen over there in Ireland. So Stephen's asking, did the executives who learned how to get the most out of a Genba walk become teachers of their direct reports?
Yes, I would say that that's true, because the executives learned what to look for, and in Genba walking with their subordinate leaders, they would either find what they were looking for, they would see what they were looking for, or they would note that there was something missing in the application of the lean management system, the implementation of the lean management system in their various areas. So these are smart people, and they learn quickly. They're like single trial learners.
Mm-hmm.
You can't cover the full range of lean or lean management, but element by element, I always felt confident that the executives were indeed going to be competent and comfortable going out, making observations and having conversations with people as coaches themselves.
So when you talk about the coaching the executive, do you think that's a one shot, or would you do that like several times a year, for example?
In our practice, we did that once a month. That was as much time as the executives would give us, be about 45 minutes or an hour a month, but it became something that was regular and something that the executives actually look forward to.
Right.
So yeah, you need to be sensitive to, so if my student no longer needs tutoring, then we can reduce the frequency or perhaps reduce the time involved. And at some point, if the executive says, okay, I've got it, I'd like you to move on and work with this vice president who reports to me, so that he or she can become more at ease with this kind of observation.
Sure. Okay, I'm going to keep going. There's quite a lot of questions here. So the next one is from Javier, who says, which alternative approaches would you suggest when the process is so alien to the executives that they cannot intuitively understand what they're actually seeing during the Genba walk?
So I don't. So if the Genba walk is focused, if the initial Genba walks, say the first, if you're going to look at 5 or 6 elements of lean management, the first 5 or 6 Genba walks ought to focus on those elements of lean management, which are should be highly visual and readily interpretable. If part of the Genba walk, if part of the area is a series of reasonably complex value stream maps, I would hold off on taking an executive through value stream mapping until he or she was interested in it, or necessary for them to understand at a deeper level what was going on in the process area. But
Right.
but if lean management is too complicated for an executive to understand, I would question how are we applying lean management and the visual controls that it represents.
Sure. We actually had a lady called Alina Stuhr on. I think she's just dropped off now, from Thermo Fisher, and she found exactly the same point on the evolution of Genba walks. So what they found is they had to go back and do further education with the executive team on lean, and in terms of some of the culture and behavioral side of things as well, because as you said earlier on, they weren't mature enough in their understanding of not necessarily the topic, what we make in this area, or what accounting's about or whatever, but the how do you do root cause problem solving or something like that. So yeah, I think that's good point. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll keep going. So question from Andrew here. Thanks, David. I'm intrigued about the use of a Genba walk worksheet. Do you find this supportive or distracting? Shouldn't the execs simply look and see?
Well, we found it that it was a very valuable tool for certainly in the first several go-rounds in helping the executives feel more comfortable, more prepared for what they were going to be doing out on the floor. For the most part, executives, might walk through an area and sort of, wave to say hello to the people in the area, but they were quite unfamiliar with it in terms of the nuts and bolts of the daily processing work that goes on in a given area. So the worksheet provides an orientation to asking about elements of the work process itself. How are the visual controls used here? Is only one example. So the executives, even though they may, how would I say this? Even though they may feel comfortable, sort of doing a like a royalty coming through and waving at the at his or her subjects. The worksheets really prepared our senior executives to engage substantively with the people in the area based on understanding element by element how they were using the management system. So again, the work in office processes itself is not visible. So just going and observing can be pretty confusing without a context, a framework for understanding it. And the worksheets provide that context and framework for understanding how lean management can apply in these non-physical business processes.
Yeah, I agree. I think, if you look at the psychology of it, these are very often task-orientated people. So they're asked to go and do a Genba walk, but they don't really understand what the task is and whether they've been successful doing it. And if you've got a sheet and you complete something, it gives them that sort of psychological support maybe in what they're doing, I suppose.
And they quickly became, perhaps you could say, fans of the worksheet, but they asked for it. This is something that helps guide their observation. So I don't think the worksheet represents a barrier between the executive and the work that's going on in the area. Rather, the worksheet is the beginning of a dictionary or of a roadmap for how is the work in the area, how is it processed, what are the elements of the management system that reflect the health or ill health of the work process in the area. So they liked it. They represented staff work for them.
What was the change in the percentage of Genba walks? You said it was 50% before. What did it change to after you'd implemented this?
It was well, any Genba walk that was canceled was rescheduled at the initiative of the executive who had to cancel a Genba walk. So the uptake, if you will, was 100%.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So a question from Ming Hao. How do you do a Genba walk in a business function environment where most of the things are not visible?
Oh, well, what the management system calls for is making the status of the work visible. So let's say we're in an area where engineering feeds information to database functions. So you've got engineers doing work, and you've got database people needing access to that work so that they can do work on pricing, promotion, catalogs, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that work is completely invisible. It's all, it's between me and my screen, right? So there's a visual control that is between engineering and database. The visual control is actual versus expected date when the data from engineering is available to database, and then the information from database being available for use by manufacturing. So this is an actual versus expected interval for these work packages, if you will, moving from one organizational unit that's part of a cross-functional process, moving from one organizational unit to its next downstream neighbor. That's engineering, providing the information on a timely basis to database. So the actual versus expected is when should I have it from engineering based on schedules that we've worked out with our neighboring departments. And then similarly between database and catalog development or whatever other functions are going to use that information. So you could tell at the beginning of every day, standing in front of the board, representatives from the functions that were involved in this cross-functional business process, you could tell if you've got red entries on that board, that means that work is overdue. It's directly interpretable with no ambiguity. So the management system implementation, particularly in areas that are network dependent for advancing the work process across functions, the visual control it turned out to be an extremely useful tool for them to highlight where do we need to pay attention, what accountability board items do we need to use so that we understand what's happening in this process or at this handoff point, and so that we can redo the way we do the handoffs so that people are not caught by surprise or left with no work to do. So the challenge is a relatively straightforward one of putting together charts that show actual performance versus expected performance as agreed upon by those who were involved on either side of the process boundaries.
Okay, very good. So Ming, if you want more on the visual management, the last webinar we did with Gwendolyn Galsworth, which was actually on the visual management topic. So you can look at that on repeat if you want to go back to the website and have a look at that. So thank you for that. So a question now from Andrew. I'm currently, oh, sorry, there's a bit of a typo. In the current circumstances, have you experience of use of remote or virtual Genba walks?
Yes. So let me, so one of the, so the virtual Genba walk, for example, I'm in Asia, and you're in someplace in Europe, and Peter's in North America, and we're all participants broadly in the same process. So how do we show actual versus expected, and how do we show the elements on the accountability board? You would first of all, you'd find someone competent in Excel. That would not be me. But you would produce those boards typically in Excel or whatever application you use to make them visual. And it would not be unusual to have a virtual meeting with someone in Malaysia, someone in Hong Kong, someone in Europe, and someone in North America. The time zones get a little tricky, of course. But you're looking at what's the status of production? Are there red elements that we need to address? Who should be responsible for addressing them, perhaps in each site? And how will those sites communicate with each other in terms of making an assessment of the problem and then developing interventions to make improvements to the problem and then to sustain those improvements. It just means that some people are not going to get as much sleep as others, but the fact of making the boards visible is I think is critical, and I've seen them work across continents very effectively.
Okay, thank you. So I have a rather sad question from Jobs Wilhelm here. So he says he went to a senior manager very much along the sort of lines you discussed, but the performance of the Genba walks fell back in 3 months to what it was before. So he's asking, is this the point to stop doing lean?
Oh, this would be like, no, this is not the time to stop doing lean. Rather, it's the time to go to the customer, who would be the executive, and work to understand what would be more useful to you. How what was the practice that led you to abandon this activity? What's the information that you would like to know, and in what format would you like to get it? So value, as always, is defined from the point of view of the customer. And if the customer, this would be your executive, is not finding value in the process, in the Genba walk, then it's time to assess how could we provide value from the point of view of the customer. Granted, there are, we're constrained to draw senior executives from the pool of currently available human beings, and we can be very quirky as humans. And there may be cases where you're just not going to have the buy-in, and you need to use your judgment about how long and and how vigorously should you beat your head against this wall until you can think of a way around it. But that kind of thing will happen. Not very often, I would hope, but it'll happen.
Yeah. Okay. Question from Matthias over there in Germany. How does this way of doing Genba walks affect or change the relation between employees and lean coaches?
Well, so the employees doing the work, who are the participants in the entries that go into the visuals in the lean management system, I would think that getting the executives to pay attention and respond to issues that repeatedly show up on the visuals in the lean management system, I should think employees would find that a benefit. The items that go on the day by hour tracking charts that are red are typically associated with things that are frustrating sources of delay and difficulty for employees, frontline employees. And if senior leaders are now looking at these red elements that seem not to change to green, I would think that the lean coach ought to be encouraging the senior executive in addressing those at his or her level at least, and that should, if anything, my experience has been that strengthens the connection between the lean coach and the frontline employees.
Okay, thank you. So I think just 2 or 3 more if we can, David.
Sure.
So one from Andy here. Can you expand on an example of what you mean by respecting the chain of command?
Well, so in my experience is that most generally, so for the most part, executives are recruited to sign up for supporting lean implementations. In most cases, the executives are taking it on faith that lean is going to be helpful to them because their own annual goals are often predicated on an effective lean implementation. So I wouldn't expect that they would know very much about lean going into it, and the translation of Sensei is one who has gone before you of a teacher. So we don't need to teach you the complexities of Kanban replenishment quantities for a resource in an area that feeds multiple value streams. Those kinds of more engineering-oriented tools of lean and their application. But this is how well is your area performing in the business process that we count on for accuracy, speed, and quality. So I wouldn't expect that the executives would be knowledgeable, and I would expect that they would find value in being able to diagnose for themselves how healthy is my chain of command. If we go to the front line, I'll give you an example with a mild obscenity in it. I recall going to an area looking at a team leader's production tracking chart, and that was very, very neatly filled in. And I asked the team leader, is this helping you? And the team leader gave me a disgusted look, ripped the chart off the board where it had been pinned and said, "This is just bullshit. I've been writing stuff down in this chart for 6 months. I haven't seen a single thing improve." If you're seeing that, then somewhere between, and you're the senior executive, somewhere between you and that team leader, the deployment of lean as a strategy has broken down. There's a broken link in your chain of command, somewhere between you and that floor team leader. So you've got subordinate executives, people in various leadership positions who have stopped emphasizing or have bad-mouthed lean, consider it a waste of time, and pay no attention to it. You need to find out where that weak link is and have conversations with that person, the occupant of that position, to reset their expectations. And as an executive, to put them on a Gemba walk schedule yourself so that you can be perfectly clear with them about your expectations for the implementation of the elements of the lean management system in their organization and from their level in the organization down to the front line. This is a problem that only a senior executive can deal with. A break in the chain of command and an issue with potentially replacing or moving the people who represent that broken link. These are exclusively executive responsibilities. So it's important that they participate and that they get the kind of feedback from the lean coach that might suggest to them action on their part to look further down their chain of command, or maybe up until they find the weak link, and then have those expectations about this is what I want you to do. I'll be looking in other areas under your responsibility, and this is what I expect to see, and then follow up on that and take the appropriate action based on what you observe.
Okay, thank you. So we have a question here from Peter, who says, how much executive education awareness is needed before you can start doing Gemba walks?
I would say that the process of beginning the Gemba walks would be that initial conversation, and I do not have that slide in this deck, so I would have to refer you to my website to find it. It's Introduction to Executive Gemba Walking in the resources section of the site. But when you have that initial conversation, you're doing that's the initial education. The Gemba walk ought to exist in a matrix or an environment in which the elements of lean, the importance of going to the process, go to the process, look at the people. Sorry, go to the process and talk to the people. That's where the education begins. Lean is actually not very abstract, especially the lean management system is not very abstract. And the connections between the health of the management system and the health of the production system, I've always found to have been quite easy to make that connection. So don't wait for someone else to rope an executive into an executive education program. I would not. I don't recommend that. I would rather work one-on-one, or rather people in the field work, especially initially one-on-one as coaches, teachers, and supporters of senior executives in understanding what lean is, especially what lean management is, and leave the technical nuts and bolts reductions in cycle time as a percent of reductions in process time as a percent of cycle time, and the other esoteric elements of lean. It's quite straightforward. There are things you can see with your own eyes when the management system has been effectively implemented.
Okay, time's a bit against us. I think we'll just take one more question if that's okay.
Sure.
This is from Dennis, who said, when would you start a lean journey in a company? Hold on, when you start a lean journey in a company, would you spend more time on executive coaching or on method training?
I would start with making improvement. So I would start with lean implementations. I often have. I've gone to some part of the business based on either what I know about the business or a suggestion from a knowledgeable person. And I'd say, just, tell me what the problems are here. What are the things that most frustrate you or that wake you up at 3 o'clock in the morning? So I want to work on a pull, not a push. So you tell me what the problem is. If I'm a competent lean implementer, I will have tools and approaches that I can use to help resolve the difficulty that you're experiencing. So I first want to present myself as someone who is on your side, can be helpful, can help you and your team put improvements in place, and then sustain those improvements over time so that we can move to the next one. That is, I think, in terms of credibility, that's the main thing to focus on. How can you be helpful to people so that what you're giving them meets their needs? At that point, you begin to develop a license to suggest to them taking the same approach, applying the same approach in other areas where there may be related difficulties. But the first thing is, don't tell them what they need to know. Ask them. So that would be push. You want to flow when you can, pull when you can't, and never push. And so asking, so tell me what your problems are. I'm inviting you to pull something from me that will help you deal with the problem that you've just indicated. I haven't come to you and said, what I think you need to do is get your finished goods under control. That may have nothing to do with what you find vexing and frustrating. Start with being helpful with a problem that's defined by your customer. Always.
Okay, very good. So, David, thank you very much for presenting and answering so many questions. In fact, there were a few more which we didn't really have time to get around to, so apologies if we didn't come to your question. I think that's been a very interesting session. Just one more point. A couple of people have asked whether or not we could circulate the slides. I don't know if that might be possible.
Oh, definitely.
Okay, if you could send them over, we can send them round to people afterwards, if that's okay.
Okay, and again, I'm not doing active consulting anymore, but the thing I like to do most is help people who are trying to apply the tools in what I've written. I'm happy to do Q&A sessions with teams or individuals who would like a little help in understanding next steps, perhaps in their lean journey. So I'm open to that to start via email, and I appreciate you, Peter, the opportunity, and appreciate the members of your audience. And to all of you, best wishes for success on the lean journey.
Good, thank you very much. Emma, would you like to sort of close us down for the day?
Yeah, thank you very much, David. So you will receive a follow-up email after this, which will have the webinar recording in it, and also some feedback, which is greatly appreciated. And all of our upcoming webinars are on our website, which will also be included in the email. So yes, thank you very much, everyone, and take care. Thank you.
Great. Thanks. Bye, everyone. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.